Anyway, Vanarchy, go ahead, brother. Vanarchy.
I was muted again.
Okay. Running low on
uh,
time, man. 1 minute. Go
yeah.
ahead.
No, that's fine. You go ahead and sign off. But I didn't want to talk to you afterwards for a minute.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to do that because I got to switch right over to Aaron. So,
Oh yeah, that's right. All right.
yeah,
All
it's
right.
it's that it's that kind of night. But send me an email, bro.
All right. Good talking to y'all.
Yep, fair enough. Always good hearing from you, Mrs. O. Your final word for the night.
Well, I hope everybody has a nice, safe weekend and do something fun and enjoyable and watch out for your neighbor.
As always, solid and good right-headed advice. Not the wrong-headed kind. Anyways, B. Pete, what you got to say in closing?
Well, everybody have a good week, and we'll see you next week. Don't forget to support the Ochelli Effect. Do what you can, and remember always in the summertime, some things hang a little lower.
That is absolutely true. And, yes, I do appreciate you mentioning the support aspect because, quite frankly, this week alone, I had to sell off a firearm and pawn a guitar. So, little tight. If you've been thinking about when is a good time to donate to the cause here, it's now. Just saying, a couple things are going to get straightened out and things are going to be better shortly. But tough times, it does help, and you will be helping to keep this show going and the other shows that I am producing as well. So appreciate that. Appreciate you for listening. I appreciate you, BP, for co-hosting. Everybody for calling in. Thank you so much. And remember this, guys, no matter who you are, where you are, when you are, I am merely Ochelli. All of you are indeed the effect. Stay tuned for the Age of Transitions, and that'll be followed by Uncle the Broadcast after I take about a minute pause here in between.
Well, I think you kind of addressed this, but why were no anti-aircraft missile batteries on the roofs of the Pentagon and White House utilized that morning?
Well, because they were told to stand down. This has been proven by Norman Panetta's testimony to the 9/11 Commission, which we actually have videos of. And so he said that Mr. President, the plane is 50 miles out. Later, Mr. President, do the orders still stand? Later, 10 miles out. Later, 5 miles out. Do the orders still stand? And Cheney whipped his neck around and said, "Of course, the orders still stand," to the young man who's asking the question, which Norman Mineta was witnessing. Did I give you any reason to the contrary? And so the plane or whatever hits the Pentagon, and so the orders could only have been to allow the plane through.
It's amazing. And it was just probably a year before that golfer Payne Stewart was in a tragic accident with his plane where the oxygen was drained from the cabin. Everybody died instantly on board, so it was flying like an autopilot. And I think they sent up fighter jets within 15 minutes or something to make sure. The contrast there is shocking. That a year later we had these planes flying all over. That one is headed for the heart of the defense establishment, and if anything was done, they shot down Flight 93. If that was done, I don't see any other action they took. Did they?
Well, there were drills that day which took our fighter jets north, south, and east away from the heart of our country, and those drills also involved, or separate drills involved, the appearances on the NTSB radar of presumed hijackers, which were fake. They were not real, but it was confusing the air traffic controllers. This has been documented not by us, but by researchers like David Ray Griffin.
Is David Ray Griffin, does he work with your organization?
Well, much of our material is based on the work that he did early on. He's writing other books these days, but he's written 14 books on the subject of 9/11 now. Most notably, 9/11 Commission: Omissions and Distortions, and 9/11 New Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, so he's basically, I guess, the only one that's out there analyzing the 9/11 Commission report, like the Warren Commission critics did early on with the JFK. We really haven't had, but I mean, I don't know who was, but I'm guessing he probably didn't have a major publisher for those, because I can't imagine a major publisher would touch that kind of material.
Well, I forget the name.
You were listening to The Age of Transitions. I'm your host, Aaron Franz, coming at you live this Friday night, July 16th, 2021. Live every Friday night from the facilities of Ochelli.com. Do listen live. You can call in 319-527-5016. You can pick up the podcast of the show at Ochelli.com or my website, theageoftransitions.com. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing the show. Thank you for your support. Want to send special thank yous to Neil for your Ochelli Effect t-shirt order. I did see that. That just came in today, and I saw your email too, so thank you for that, Neil. I'm going to be tie-dyeing that and sending that out to you as soon as it's ready to go. Also, thank you, David and Ray, not Griffin. This almost completed the David Ray Griffin name there, but David and Ray, two separate people, for ordering Ochelli Effect shirts, and to Alex for his donation of or for his order of an Age of Transitions shirt. So the new Age of Transitions t-shirts are available at theageoftransitions.com. We also have Ochelli Effect shirts. When you order an Ochelli Effect shirt, I send the money made on that to Chuck. So it keeps Chuck going and the network going. So if you want to help Chuck out, that's one way to do it. And of course, Age of Transitions goes my way, as does any orders of Revolve, Man's Scientific Rise to Godhood, or also the Patreon. So thank you everybody on Patreon. Thank you to Sam. Big thanks to Sam for your patronage on Patreon. More on that in a moment, perhaps, but thank you, Sam, for that. And thank you, everybody at Patreon who's new, who's stuck with me, who's been there at all on Patreon. That means a lot. New bonus podcast every month for Patreon subscribers. So thank you, everybody over there. Again, the website is theageoftransitions.com. You can find everything there. And again, appreciate your support and for just listening to the show. I am actually doing a live stream video of this particular episode tonight. That's on the Uncle Twitch. It's on the Uncle YouTube. It's probably up on the Uncle Twitter feed right now too. So it's something different. I see Creative Accidents in the chat room. So if you want to check that out, that's up there. Something a little different. We'll be live streaming the video both hours tonight. And of course, live show. So do call in and have a talk, and a question perhaps for our guest would be good. The call-in number is 319-527-5016. You can also come on the show via Skype. Just send a message to Chuck. He's Charles.Ochelli on Skype, or call 319-527-5016. Okay, on with the show here. It's a great show because we have a guest tonight. It's a guest who has been a listener of the show and has been sending me emails corresponding for a while. He sent me some emails a while back saying, hey, I'm thinking about writing a book. I said, that's really cool. I'm excited. And did some back and forth and encouraged him to write the book. And lo and behold, he has completed the project. It is available. You can buy a copy of Dancing with My Fate, a handbook about life and death. That's the title, Dancing with My Fate. The author is Sam Aydlette. Sam, welcome to the show.
Hey, Aaron, I'm actually shocked that you got my last name absolutely correct with pronunciation. That's never happened.
I was, when I read it, I realized, oh gosh, I didn't ask him how to pronounce the name. I hope I get this right. So
that's amazing. It's literally the first time that it's ever happened in my entire life.
Really? Nobody's ever gotten this?
It's usually like Aydlette or Aydlette, Aydlette.
Acolyte.
Yes.
Really? Okay. Well, gosh. Okay. I'm proud now. That's great. Okay. Sam Aydlette. Nice. Okay. Well, Sam, it's great having you on the show, man. I'm really happy to have you here. And to begin, I mean, why don't you just let the audience know who you are, and then also like maybe why you decide to write a book?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, Aaron, thanks so much for having me on the show. First off, much appreciated. So yeah, name's Sam Aydlette. I'm just a, regular guy, don't have a social media presence, not really a public person at all. But, decided to write a book. I had this idea, percolating in my head for, a decade probably. I've been working on it on and off, and the idea has grown and grown, and as I've I can talk a little bit more about why I wrote the book in a minute, but it's something that I've wanted to do for a long time for sure. So really happy that it's finally here, and yours is actually the first podcast that I've ever come on, so I'm trying to do this promotion thing here. So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm proud to be the first person to have you on as a guest. Now I'm going to attempt to describe the book. I'm going to try to, God help me, put it into a category or two, and you tell me if I'm correct at all in this. If I'm wrong, please let me know. I'd say that this book is about, let's go with topics here. It's about philosophy and let's see here. It's definitely a philosophy book. I'm trying to think. Well, let's just go with that. Is it a philosophy book? Let's just start with that.
Yep. So good question. So philosophy. So in Greek, and I mean I'm Greek, so I'm not like super duper smart with all my Greek words, but I happen to know that philosophy comes from the Greek, which means a love of wisdom. So in that sense, yes, it is in the old school philosophical tradition of seeking wisdom for the pursuit of understanding and knowledge. Is it philosophical in the more modern sense of analytic or continental philosophy as a tradition and as a rigor of study? No, in no way. So I'm not trying to claim that one, but in the more broad sense of like the tradition of humans just seeking knowledge, yes, definitely a philosophy book.
What about this one? What about semiotics? Like the concept of where knowledge derives from. Is it semiotics? Do you think it would be or no?
So saucer, I think that's how you pronounce it. The idea of semiotics, I mean, I would actually say that it's if you had to say anything about that, it would be like an anti-semiotics.
Nice, yeah.
But, right. So I mean, I would flip that up and say it's the antithesis of semiotics.
Nice. Yeah, and I know what you're saying, and that I appreciate this book because I'm sort of an oddball that a like mind. So you're definitely, I see you as a like mind here on the show, so that's something that's exciting. And I would say one of the main things that I derived out of this book, and sort of what I see as the main point, is that it's taking the, I guess, what you could say mainstream accepted consensus reality almost idea that the world and actually all experience is objective, primarily objective in nature. And that we should view things, if we're viewing things correctly and without bias, we should seek to be as objective as possible. I believe that's consensus reality at this point. And you're turning it on its head and saying, no, actually, it's more the subjective route, and nothing is completely objective, and it's a folly to do that. And then you proceed in the other direction. Is that correct?
I'd say that's kind of correct. So the whole idea of the book, I mean, and yeah, now I'm going to get into it a little bit. Like, it's this idea of taking things to their extreme, right? Because in this postmodern, whatever you want to call it, world that we're living in, everything is extreme. Everything is pushed to the limit. So my kind of thought process was, something is off here. I felt that way for a long time, ever since I was a kid, really. And I mean, there were multiple reasons for that, but, suffice it to say that this feeling was something that for a long time I, repressed or I questioned. And I thought, okay, this can't be the truth, because, this is so, I would be marginalized if this was the truth. But then, as I grew older and as I got more experience, got more confident in my truth. So, the idea of contrasting, objective reality versus non-objective, that's one way of looking at it. But I think really what I'm kind of saying here is that there's objectively, if you look at things objectively, if you take them to their extremes, then you'll see that life is ironic objectively. You'll see that the object consistently eludes the subject's pursuit. Yes. Always, like, to the point where it's like, it's funny, Yeah. So that's really where, like, the pun of the joke is, and it's not like a cruel joke at all, actually. And, I talk about that later on in the book, but it's actually a beautiful thing. But just this idea that, there's a quote in the book that I love by Jean Baudrillard, which is, "Let's all believe just for an instant that there's a fatal and enigmatic bias in the order of things." And that's kind of what I'm going for, that, objectively it's biased.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, I mean, there's to me that's the human experience, is the subjective realm of the mind, because that's where we spend really all of our time, when you think about it, is our mind, and it's our mind interpreting the world before us. And it's just a simple look at different people, and all you gotta do is ask different folks around you questions about what it is they think about any given thing. Like, oh, what do you think about that thing sitting over there? And they'll tell you this probably strange story that you would have never come up with, and you didn't see it that way, but nevertheless, that's the way that they see the world, and that's what the world is to them. So I don't know. To me, this is I don't know. Again, I was just it's refreshing to see talk go in this direction, because I don't think it does enough. So I appreciate that. And then you're talking about joking. You make many mentions. I want to say probably on every page it gets mentioned somewhere. The trickster god, almost every page. Do you want to talk a little bit about the trickster god?
Yes, sure. So, I mean, it's funny that you brought up, Aaron. I mean, one of my favorite shows that you did was on, like, serendipity. I don't know exactly what show it was, but you talked about how you would walk around the city and, like, look at stuff, and you meet people, and then that person would tell you something that, like, you needed to hear, and it would just be some random person,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
it's like a movie or something where it's like the wise old man at the gas station, like, like,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know what your problem is, son, it's like,
Yeah,
so,
yeah. Happens all the time.
yeah. So the trickster god, that's like the trickster god is the idea that this entity, this force, this power greater than ourselves in the universe that is kind of guiding the ironic, bias of the universe, if you will, is a trickster. And it manifests itself, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it's not tied to any kind of religious, ideology or anything like that. It's just self-evident. And it manifests itself in everything other to ourselves. So, I mean, this isn't something that's like, oh, and it's this or it's that. It's literally like right under the bottom of your social media scrolling feed. Like that thing that you want, right on, like when you keep scrolling, that's the trickster god, or like that mysterious, person of the opposite sex that's at the bar in the corner that, smoking the lucky, like they're the trickster god. That thing that you want, the
Yeah.
embodiment of what you want in the universe, is the trickster god, that you don't have and that you want. And that's everywhere. So that's kind of the idea behind it, is that, this trickster god is and when it kind of flips the idea of like desire on its head, because we think of desire like like you were saying at the beginning, this, this concept in psychology that emanates from ourselves, and this like drive, and this, it's healthy to have desire. Well, I kind of flip that, and it's like, actually, no, desire actually comes from the objects of our desire, and they control it. So they're like controlling us,
Yeah.
And I like that idea because, most of the time, at least for me, I'm like not, it doesn't feel like it's just this healthy, thing. Like, I mean, otherwise marketing wouldn't really be that effective, and it's extremely effective.
Well,
So,
I like what you're saying here, because you're talking about personal responsibility, actually. And I think that in today's world, there's a lot of guilt heaped on people because they feel as though they're responsible for all of these different things, which in reality, they may or may not be completely responsible for. Maybe partially, but you're talking about these desires, how they're not wholly ours, for one thing, but they're very much outside of ourselves. As you're saying, you're using this concept of the trickster god as the source of these desires. But certainly, I mean, our biological makeup, if you want to go in that direction, I mean, it's our biology that brings up desire too. If you want to go that way, I think that's accurate to say too. So I just think that there's a lot of guilt that we don't necessarily, that we could let go of if we started. I mean, what say you to that? Any thoughts on that?
yeah, I mean, I think you're definitely picking up what I was trying to put down in the book. I mean, so two things come to mind. The first is, absolutely from the sense of our, from the inside coming out, our biology, our, it kind of is tied to this, like you say, self-responsibility. I would tie that to our identity, right? And what we're responsible for versus what we're not, who are we? And so the internal side of things, and like what we were just talking about desire, or so many things, and we as members of society, but then there's society itself and this construct. So there's things like being, having an identity of your legal self, what you're responsible for, or your yourself of like externally defined identities. And I would actually say that that's kind of like a mafia, stranglehold over a neighborhood, parading itself as like cultural pride. Because so, like, for example, like I claim myself, my nationality, I'm American, I claim to be American. I accept that that's part of my identity. And overseas, especially I've I've traveled, and there are many shared unique characteristics of Americans, and many of which do describe me because I was brought up here in America. But not all of them describe me, and moreover, there are a lot of people I know that there are plenty of they don't fit, like, for whatever reason, the image of being American, this idea, this construct of John Wayne or Marilyn Monroe or whatever it is, it doesn't fit them, and they are essentially culturally homeless, and I would be culturally homeless if I said no to that. And it's kind of hanging over all of our heads, and it brings to mind the case of Bergdahl, Bowie Bergdahl. Do you know who I'm talking about?
No, I'm not quite sure who that is. No.
He's a soldier who left his post in Iraq and actually went and joined forces with I can't remember if it was Iraq or Afghanistan.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So that's an extreme case, right? But that's what happens to people that their identity stops conforming with, the identity of the
the collective identity of what it is that they're supposed to be. Like, I come from America, therefore I'm American.
But you know that's not true, because look at all of our artists, all of the people that we idolize, especially after they die. None of them conformed. None of them were John Wayne. They were all the marginalized people that hated every single one of them. Martin Luther King or Tupac or Kurt Cobain, you name it. They're all the people that felt alienated.
Yeah.
We all, obviously, they sold millions of records, or millions of movies. We relate to these people a lot. So, my point being, conformity out of fear is not the same thing as identity. And likewise, being manipulated by media imagery or advertising or whatever into doing something because you feel overwhelmed, that's also not the same as identity. So just kind of something in the book that's, a challenge to that. And so who are we? I think we get to define ourselves. I think we get to choose who we are.
Yeah.
I don't think that anybody or anything can define us except for ourselves.
Nice. Yeah. Now, you mentioned this earlier briefly, and clearly, I mean, for listeners of the show, I think they'll relate to the things you're saying of you mentioned how you felt as though something was off, just generally speaking, with the world around you. I guess you've always felt that way, but it was confusing earlier on, and I guess it takes a while to come around to start making any sense. I mean, would you say, and was this book born out of truth seeking? And in truth seeking, I guess that I can't help but go back to the alternative media sphere and alternative research and things like that. And I mean, surely you came across that stuff at some point. Is that right? And if so, would you like to describe your experience with all of that? Could you do that?
Sure. Yeah. So I can, and I'm. It's funny because it takes a little bit of courage for me, and I admire yourself and Chuck so much for just putting it all out there, because I mean, it's not easy. So I really appreciate that, and you've both inspired me a lot. So I mean, my story, as far as truth seeking, yes, I mean, I've always felt that things were off, and that's been because of various things that were exposed to me, in terms of hypocrisy or abusive situations, which, I mean, I don't really want to get into those things here.
Sure.
But
no.
Suffice it to say that the truth that, all is not, this perfect, everything makes sense, was, exposed to me at a very young age, and was really deepened by my experience in the Army, because I was in the military. I was in the Army infantry and deployed to Iraq. And I mean, that year really, the childhood and all of those experiences combined with that. And I was like, wow, nothing is as it seems, and when I really started digging into this was when I got back from the Army. When I got out of the military, I did, and actually I was pretty. I mean, I don't know how much I thought about like how much I want to get into this or not, but let's just say like I was pretty deeply involved in the Ron Paul movement, like to the point where I like knew a lot of the top people like personally, which is like what? Yeah, I mean, like I don't know if you know the names of like some of the folks, that ran the campaign, and there was some controversies and stuff.
Okay. Interesting. Very interesting. And again, you don't feel the need to say anything you don't want to, but fascinating. I'll say that. And
I mean, I volunteered. Like the campaign headquarters was like really close to my house, so like I would go there and I met all of them, and then I actually worked at an organization that was affiliated with the Pauls.
Sure.
So for a little bit, and then. So, I mean, then I really got disillusioned with libertarianism. Not that I don't like respect people that are libertarian. And I mean, I would say that I'm like, backyard chickens libertarian still.
Yeah, got it. Yeah.
But I'm definitely not like Ken Cuccinelli libertarian, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Got it.
Like, F that guy,
Yeah.
So, I kind of left that, and then I kind of got into Marxism and, this idea of, so I kind of like shifted completely to other radical ideology, and then I kind of got involved, and then I started, looking at, obviously like, Bernie Sanders, but really, my last hurrah was Tulsi Gabbard.
Really?
And I didn't really get too involved with it because I was a lot more cynical. But I kind of put placed my bets with her, and I volunteered and stuff. And, then after, I don't like, to be completely honest with you about that one, like, I still have no idea what that was all about or anything, but there's a lot of things that like make absolutely no sense to me about that.
Her campaign you're talking about?
Her campaign, the things that happened, like there's so, I mean, oh man.
Got it. Like, yeah, okay, yeah.
Seeing it from the inside, like I also got to meet, her and some, briefly. I wasn't nearly as like connected as I was with the Pauls, but I did volunteer quite a bit. So then after that, I was like, wow, this guy that I've been reading about, Baudrillard, is right. That like, because this, fatal and enigmatic bias. And I was like, I kept bringing up things like, to people that people were like, dude, stop, where I was like, the mafia controls everything. Like everyone's an MK Ultra victim. Like I'm starting to get, in a pretty paranoid, cynical place. And, and then I was like, something needs to shift inside of me because, if I keep going down this way, it's not a good way to be. So that's really where the book came out of, is this, this place of kind of a need to come up with a strategy to cope with reality. I mean, the contradictions, the confusion, the uncertainty, the pain, and I also, once I started figuring things out more, I really wanted to share that with others. So that was kind of a driver for me too.
Nice. Yeah. Well, again, I mean, I relate to so much of this, and I know that you, like myself, somehow came out the other end of all this, and at least according to all appearances, we're normal, well-adjusted people with families and regular lives. So I that's something I take pride in, I know, and I get the sense that you do as well. So that's something to be thankful for. I know not everybody comes out the other end of all of this. So congratulations to you for doing that, first of all.
Yeah, it's still a work in progress, but
yeah. Well, that isn't that the truth. Yeah, I mean, this is the situation we're all in. Is everybody, whether they want to admit it or not, is a philosopher. Everybody's looking for meaning in their life. Anybody who stops to think for even a couple seconds, I want to think, sees these glaring contradictions everywhere, and then just asks the simple question, why? And so I don't know. It's just the state of things, and it's just part of being here now. And yeah, that's not. I definitely, it comes through when you read the book, those various things. I know that you use, especially towards the end of the book here, you use the term the elites, and you talk about that. And so clearly I saw the influence of that line of thinking, the line of thinking that has born the Age of Transitions podcast here, of there is such a thing as a dominant minority. That's a real thing. When somebody comes to realization that that is the truth, there's quite the process that you can go through and different ideas about it. And then over time, your concepts change. But I mean, would you say that you still believe that there is such a thing as a dominant minority? And if so, what is it, according to your idea on that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so absolutely. Yes. I mean, I kind of, my whole life, I've kind of been flabbergasted that people could believe otherwise.
Yeah, sure.
Ever since I was 11 and saw Goodfellas and stuff, if you watch any gangster movie, will tell you, this is fictionalized, but if you just read, if you can read between the lines even a tiny amount, you know that there's a lot of truth in these gangster movies, or in these Hollywood portrayals of rampant crime and all of this. It's obvious if you're just kind of looking, or if you want to know. You don't even really have to research it. You just have to walk around any major city for 20 minutes.
Yeah, they'll even put their names on the buildings typically.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, but as far as the way I see it, now there's been a huge shift for me, and the catalyst again with this book, my heart has kind of shifted, and I used to feel like I needed to fight them. And I felt that I had responsibility to do that, going back to this idea of responsibility. And, I still feel like that is true, but there's been a shift in me lately. I guess probably prior to writing this book, but I've come to an understanding. I actually researched quite a bit into James Jesus Angleton. I don't know if you know who that person is.
The name sounds familiar, but who is that?
So Chuck may know a lot. I mean, so James Jesus Angleton is a kind of a under the, if you're really into the JFK conspiracy and all of that, he's kind of a important figure. He was the chief of counterintelligence of the CIA for 3 decades.
Okay.
From the 50s to the 70s. And so, I mean, as you can imagine, counterintelligence for the CIA, you kind of are the person that knows everything, in the world. That, I mean, if there's any one person that knows everything, it's the counterintelligence chief of the CIA, because he even knows the dirt on the CIA,
Yeah, got it.
So, so, and I mean, he's a fascinating person. So I highly encourage, there's a book called The Ghost by Jefferson Morley. It's an incredible book, but I mean, basically, studying him, like, and also studying people like Alan Dulles or like, even John F. Kennedy, who you know, there's lots of people that are, kind of considered elites. And I started to kind of see a pattern where like these people are victims. And, and I started to kind of open my heart to this idea that, actually, I'll say one part of it that was in the book that like really hit home for me on this is that there was a recent interview of Paris Hilton. And, she kind of revealed that like 20 years ago when she was doing The Simple Life and all of that, she actually didn't realize that it was a joke.
Yeah.
Like, the joke was on her.
Yeah.
And that is a perfect example because, I mean, she's an elite, she's the Hiltons. They're no one needs to talk about how elite they are. And I mean, the whole world laughed at her. She was only like 22 years old or something,
Yeah, she was a child essentially. Yeah.
Yeah, she was. And I mean, so, and even people like Angleton, had a really domineering father, was kind of struggled with, alcohol abuse. That's hard to quantify, but I mean, he would drink, heavily like every lunch, so I would say that that's struggling with alcohol. So, I mean, and there's so many examples of, a great quote that I have is that, Angleton actually got pushed out of the CIA in the mid 70s with the whole church committee because he was kind of old school and was like, I don't have to be accountable to anybody. And, so they kind of were like, all right, you're retired now, and he didn't take it well, and he actually, there's a film of him, a camera crew came to his house. And I guess this is back in the 70s when like the media wasn't just like completely controlled as much, I guess. And so this camera crew of the news, came to his house and were like, what happened? And he came out and he was drunk. And he was like, well, I was pushed out, but, I wasn't pushed out the window. And then he got his trouble.
See.
And I mean, anyone who's studied the CIA knows about certain people that were pushed out or, who fell out of the window.
Got it. Yeah. Apparently he knew some of those stories. He probably knew quite more about that than what we heard in the news stories about that, if we even heard that.
Right. I mean, if not more than knew,
Sure.
But I mean, the fact is, he was not a happy man, and I mean, that really hit home for me of, we all have our struggles and we all have to wake up every morning and try to be the best person that we can be, including these elites. And in a way, the fact that they're elites and that they can achieve, like I wake up, I can't achieve the object of my desires, man. Like I make it, but like these rich people, like they can,
yeah,
they can, or they think they can. I mean, they can achieve the image of it, so that's a more brutal form in a way. So
there's it when you take a look at the lives of the elite, especially if you look at old money families and things like that, you notice certain patterns. One of them is in the upbringing of the children. They always send them to boarding school.
Paris Hilton boarding. She went to
boarding school. Okay, yes, of course. That's just typical. Is like sending them to boarding school, and so that there's a whole discipline aspect there, which discipline is not bad to inculcate in your children, but there's something. There's more to it, and even authors like Quigley will go into some detail, like some bizarre details they'll start going into with like personal ramifications of like boys going to boarding school and like, yeah, this is just how it is. And yeah, all the elite families do this. And it's like, oof, you just come across this stuff in passing, reading about it. And I don't know, every time I read about that and I think about it, it makes me reflect on my life, which is very much not like that. No boarding school, really no harsh discipline from my parents, like almost in the extreme end, the other direction. So I go, thank goodness I'm not born a Rockefeller or, Vanderbilt or what have you. Because I don't think I would want that life. There's a lot of expectations. There's a lot of ideas about what you are, who you are, what you have to be from the looks of things. Again, I'm from the outside looking in, so what do I know really? But yeah, and you look at Biltmore Estate, and just a quick look at it that's kind of like the American dream. You see that it's like, boy, if I were to engage the American dream myself to its fullest extent, I would build up an estate like Biltmore. I would build up an estate that would go on intergenerationally. I'd give the money to the next generation and have them pass it on. And that's what maybe, I don't know, maybe I'm building up a false version of the American dream. It's probably more like just to make a bunch of money and then spend it on a motorboat. but I don't know. I'm just what about the idea of this concept of discipline? Let's run with that. And how society kind of disciplines all of us in a sense with these expectations of what we're supposed to be, what we're supposed to do. And we're just all left here to work things out on our own. Do you feel that's the case? If not, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, interesting question. I mean, so that's something that I still kind of, so there's two aspects to that question, because the first is, this idea that, if you define yourself, then a lot of that just goes away, because, as long as they're not like putting their hands on me, or like, kicking my door down, or, SWAT style or whatever, then like, the day to day is like, I'm middle class American. Like, it doesn't get much better than that. Like we just talked about, the rich, you don't want to be an heir to the Rockefellers. Like that's, yeah, sure, it might seem great, but like, Prince Harry, like look at Prince Harry right now.
Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't want to be Prince Harry right now.
No.
So, but then on the other side, like, there's so like my wife, I mean, so my wife is Hispanic, and her parents both immigrated to the US from El Salvador. And they actually taught me a lot about, this idea of like the so-called, impoverished, people of the so-called third world and all of this. And, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding there too, because, from the outside, in our comfortable bubbles, it's something where it's like, save the poor people and all of this. But, on the other hand, there's a lot to be said about, not having to compromise yourself. When you have nothing to lose, you don't have to fear anything either. And I think that kind of has changed the way I think about things too, and like just learning from them and learning from their experiences, because I mean they came here, and experienced a lot, of hardship.
Sure.
They fled civil war, so I mean, as you can imagine. And you know, but they don't feel like that was, you know, some kind of discipline, you know, that they're very proud people. And in a way they have something that, you know, I actually had to learn, you know, they had it. So I had to learn that. And a lot of people in my shoes, or maybe wealthier than myself, it's harder and harder to learn. I'll put it this way. When I was in basic training, okay, I'll put it this way. I come from, like, you know, grew up comfortable. You know, my parents were educators. You know, my dad was a former military officer, and so, you know, I grew up comfortable. And I joined the Army, and I joined enlisted infantry, right? So, like, most of my people that I was serving with were, you know, most of the people that I went to high school with, if they joined the Army, they went officer, you know, because parents could afford college or whatever.
Got it.
So, but I went enlisted, and I, first day I show up, and I'm like, the drill sergeant is like, you know, hey, you get one letter. Here's your letter. You mail it out. Everyone else can learn from this person. Like, this is all you get. And I said, you know, hey, drill sergeant, you know, would you mind if I could, you know, get another letter? You know, because I want to send it to my girlfriend. And he smoked me for like 3 hours. I was like, you know, like, he made an example out of me in front of everyone and was like, oh, you think you're special?
Yeah.
Like, you think you're an individual?
Yeah.
You know, you know, and I was like, well, yes, like, my whole life, everyone's told me that, you know, and, but that was the most valuable lesson. And that's exactly what I mean, where, like, it's actually really hard to learn that lesson, that you're actually just the same as everybody else. You know, if you're a person who immigrated here from El Salvador, it's very apparent that you're the same as everybody else.
Got it. Yeah, got it.
Which is a gift, because that's the truth.
Yes.
But if you're rich, you know, you don't think you think you're better than everybody else. I deserve too.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
I deserve the system to work for me, you know, rather than the other way around. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of look at it as like a blessing in some ways, this idea of, you know, it's almost like everything is ironic. You know, you can boil it down to that. The person who is, you know, disadvantaged in the eyes of, you know, society, or like the parameters that society sets, they have a lot of things going for them in terms of this ironic reversibility. And, you know, the Dulles brothers, or the super rich, they may seem like they have everything, but, like, they really don't. Their life is hell.
Yes.
You know? So that's kind of where I'm going. And I hold on tight to that. In the beginning, I said I'm kind of torn, because at the end of the day, yes, I'm terrified of, like, people like Rudy Giuliani. Yes, I'm terrified of this. I'm terrified of these people. Yes. And if you're not, then, like, get your head out of your, you know what.
Got it.
You know,
the fact that people like this are ostensibly controlling things ought to terrify anybody. That alone is terrifying. But there's many other aspects that you're talking about here that are equally as bad. So yeah, a lot to think about. Again, the book title is Dancing with My Fate. I'm going to repeat that. Dancing with My Fate, a handbook about life and death. Do you want to say anything about the title?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, the title, I came up with it, you know, the idea of dancing. Like, okay, I'm actually a terrible dancer, so it's kind of funny. But, you know, this idea of, you know, instead of, like, when you're dancing, you're not grasping at the other, right? Like, then it wouldn't work, right? You're playing off each other.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the fun. There's no point to it. There's no progress. There's no, you know, and in the end, the song is going to end. That's the fate. But there's beauty in just letting go of responsibility, and maybe not all responsibility, but we burden ourselves with way too much in our modern age, you know, and then we look down at the people that, you know, in the past that didn't, you know, they were more free, in many ways. And so this idea of being able to dance, to hear the music of life and enjoy it, because really, what's the point other than that? You're only here for a hop, skip, and a jump, as they say.
Yeah. Life is transient, no doubt about it. A lot to think about, and that's why I was happy. I'll say this: it's one of those reads that I enjoy because it's two things. It's both simple, and it's very brief. It's not a long book, so it's easy to read. However, it's also challenging. So it's simple and it's challenging all at the same time. And I find that my favorite books are like that. They're talking about, again, a lot of times philosophical concepts and ideas that are so like fundamental that everybody can relate. So you instantly relate to what the main idea is. However, it makes you think about a lot of details, and it makes you think about it takes you in the direction that the author decides to go is always interesting. It's like, so yeah, so it's an exciting book. I enjoy it. Is this solely available as a paperback now? Is that true, Sam?
Yep. So people can buy the book. It's only available as a paperback right now. Working on conversion to an ebook. I have a battle back and forth in my mind sometimes about Amazon, and some days I wake up and I'm like, I'm going to stick it to them. And then other days I'm like, no, I just really want to sell my book. I'm just going to, so
yeah, got it.
On paperback, you can buy it there. You can buy it on Lulu. You can also buy it directly from my website. Yep. So it'll ship. Working on the ebook copy, trying to figure out the best way to go about selling it so that people can, read it on whatever device they would like to. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it is available now. Dancing with My Fate. What's the main website URL again?
dancingwithmyfate.com.
dancingwithmyfate.com. Yeah, check it out. Highly recommend it. Good book. And for me, my favorite kind of book is this actual book, the paperback, hardback, whatever it happens to be. The one that you hold and you can, it's a book. That's always my favorite. I make a point to go out and buy books in that form. So that's what I personally, my personal preference. So you're not bothering me, Sam. If you're worried about a lack of anything but paperback, I sure wouldn't worry about it. But it's exciting. I
already broke all the rules of like publishing already, like writing about a totally obscure topic. Not really writing. Like they always say, like write like you're writing at an 8th grade level. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna write like you need 2 PhDs to like figure this out. So obscure, so that's all out the window. So probably will just remain a paperback, but I'm thinking ebook copy may come. I will update one on the website if that happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking we'll have to have you back on the show at some point because I've enjoyed this conversation, and we still have a few minutes left. Before we end this here, I'll ask you briefly, do you want to stay for the next hour, which is Uncle the Podcast? Will you be sticking around for that?
Yeah, I have my beer ready so I can let loose a little bit.
Nice. All right. So if you are listening live on Ochelli.com, make sure you stick around for the next hour when this becomes Uncle the Podcast. We'll have Sam Aydlette, author of the new book, Dancing with My Fate, back on the show, still on the show. Show continues, but it's the Uncle Show in the next hour. So stick around for that. If you're listening in podcast form, go listen to the episode of Uncle the Podcast with Sam as a guest, and it'll be somewhat of a continuation of this hour, I'm sure. It'll be its own standalone thing, but it will be a continuation. So there's that. And any other thoughts that you had that you definitely, is there anything that you want to convey to the audience here, Sam, about the book, or just anything else, actually? Is there anything that you wanted to say?
I mean, so the tagline of the book that I wrote, I mean, I really like it. It says, if you want the truth, you have to find it for yourself. But I can help you craft a strategy for finding it. And I mean, I like that because, that was, people have your back is kind of the point of that. I may not be able to give you the truth, and nor would I want to, even if I had it, which I don't. But at the same time, I can help you, you can help me, we can learn from each other. That's really one of the main reasons I tune in to your show, Aaron, and I also like Chuck's show, because that's what it's all about. It's just about a bunch of people seeking the truth. Seek or seek on. I'm sorry, I said it too soon.
not a problem.
Because it's like you're helping me, I'm helping you. We're all helping each other to kind of figure it out and just kind of feel more at, what I call in the book is like feel like we found a home.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I hope that, my book can help people feel that way. I've found that sometimes I lose it, sometimes it comes back, but it's definitely brought me a lot of peace and serenity. So I'm hoping I can pass that along.
Cool. Great. Well, I'm glad you decided to make the book. I was happy to read it. Thank you for sending it my way, for being on the show here. And I would encourage others to do this. If you're on the fence, you've been thinking about making a book, not even necessarily in the same vein about anything philosophical, but maybe something odd that you feel like you were mentioning how you were breaking the rules with publishing earlier, Sam. I bet there's other people out there that have thought about writing a book, but then said no because they've read something about, well, if you do a book, make sure you do this, make sure you do this. Just make whatever it is that you want to make, and just put it out there. I want to encourage everybody to do that. And if you do, get a hold of me and come on the show. And I always love these books. It reminds me of Daryl Sloan's book, iUniverse, which was initially Reality Check, had a lot of similar feel to this book. Somebody like trying to figure out what's going on, giving their take on their personal philosophies. Thomas Sheridan's books were a bit like this. There's just a bunch of books.
The Custodian Chronicles.
Of course. Yeah, I saw that you put that in the book list here. Yeah, so you read Custodian Chronicles, right, Sam?
Because of the interview that you had. Yes, I mean, I love that book. Great book.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Tim is an awesome guy. So just any book that's written by somebody who's being genuine, it can only be a good thing. So do want to encourage that, and then encourage also the purchasing of said books, and because when you read it, it is you feel a kinship with the author. I think any good book does that. You feel, and fiction does this too. I mean, when you read a Kurt Vonnegut piece, you're like, man, this Kurt Vonnegut guy is really cool. I wish I could hang out with him, So any piece of fiction, nonfiction does that. So it's exciting. So we'll put that out there for everybody. Dancingwithmyfate.com. I got that right, Sam?
Yeah.
Dancingwithmyfate.com. Pick up the book there. You can order it. Do you ship the books out directly? I'll ask that, Sam. Are you shipping them out directly, or are they coming from Lulu?
So I had an initial offer with like pre-order where I was signing them and shipping them out directly, but now that it's just released for everyone, it's coming from Lulu or Amazon. Buy it from there. Yeah.
Got it. Cool. So if you pre-ordered, congratulations to you. I think that's cool to set it up like that, because it gives the pre-order people like a special bonus that they deserve. They deserve that. So that's cool. Dancingwithmyfate.com. Stick around here. We're on the Ochelli Radio Network. Every Friday night, it's the Age of Transitions, followed by Uncle the Podcast. Again, we've got the new T-shirts available, the Ochelli Effect shirts. You buy one, it supports the Ochelli Radio Network. I also wanted to mention that new show on the Ochelli Radio Network, the Donald Jeffries Show. I've been meaning to make a mention of that, and I haven't yet. So check that out. Listen to that. Donald Jeffries is a cool guy, and the show so far so good. Ochelli Radio Network growing, so now is a good time to show your support too. So pick up the Ochelli shirt, donate to Ochelli.com, support me in this show at theageoftransitions.com. You got your Age of Transition shirt you can order and wear, and thank you everybody who has done so. Thank you everybody for doing things which I know Sam has done. He's written up a review of the podcast on Apple Podcasts. If you do so, I'll read that on air, and it does help. And doing that actually helps the show. So thank you for any small things that you've done and for just listening. And keep listening here on Ochelli.com, because we got Uncle the Broadcast coming up. You'll be able to call in if you wish. So hope to hear from you in the next hour. My name is Aaron Franz, and as always, I will leave you by saying, Seeker, seek on.
The Age of Transition.